Sometimes we all experience situations that we just can't comprehend, and that unknown factor can be quite frightening. But does researching an unfamiliar subject make it less scary or even more terrifying? Well, let's find out as we see the following bizarre events unfold in the film Terrified. We open on a woman named Clara doing dishes when she suddenly notices a strange sound coming from the pipes. Investigating further, she notices that the pipes are almost breathing. Later on, her husband Juan gets home, excitedly talking about a dog they ran over the other day happening to actually be still alive, and being thankful they didn't bother to bury it. When he asks about dinner for the night, Clara says that she couldn't cook because she heard voices in the kitchen. He checks out the sink but hears nothing. He tries to blow this off as just the pipes being old or their neighbor Walter continuing the loud remodel of his side of the duplex home. But Clara insists on what she heard. What's worse is she says that the voices claimed that they were going to kill her. The following night, Clara wakes up at 5 in the morning for a shower. Juan attempts to go back to sleep but is suddenly awoken by a loud thudding sound against the wall. He assumes it's the neighbor doing early construction again and bangs back to get Walter to stop before deciding to head over and tell him directly. He rings the neighbor's intercom and eventually hears it activate, but never gets a response. It just sounds like someone or something snarling. Frustrated, Juan shouts for him to stop the banging or he will call the police. Upon returning to the bedroom, Juan suddenly realizes that the banging isn't coming from the walls and asks his wife if it's her making all that noise. He goes to check on her in the washroom and, well, it doesn't look good. There is blood all over the walls and Clara appears to be floating in the air, limp and lifeless. She is then slammed into the opposite wall by some unknown force before being sent back and slammed into the first wall again like some morbid game of ping pong. Juan calls out for her and tries to hold her body still, but her head just starts getting slammed repeatedly into the wall she's held against. Eventually, he just slumps to the ground, sobbing his wife's name as he helplessly watches her body getting mangled up. Let us revisit the happenings of just now and see what actually went down. So the biggest red flags so far that I think we can all agree to were the voices flat out warning Clara ahead of time that they were going to kill her. Whether that was psychotic or supernatural will both require action. But let's say we ignored this warning too. Was there anything else we could have done? Well, Clara went into the shower and almost immediately was slammed against the wall, all without her uttering a sound. So either she was sleepwalking or possibly possessed by whatever was after her. In either case, it doesn't seem likely that she was aware of what was happening to her and thus couldn't do anything about it. And in Juan's place, there would be no way to know Clara was in trouble until she was already slammed from wall to wall. The only thing he may have been able to do, besides discover her sooner, is to either pulling her body back down to earth or perform CPR if necessary, or get out of there immediately to save his own life. However, by attempting to help her, he would leave more evidence on her corpse than necessary, and I don't think any officer would believe his story of, her slipping in the shower. Now, Juan is being interrogated, but not by the police, but paranormal researchers. They next ask if he noticed anything strange in the weeks leading up to this, but instead of, saying that his wife got death threats from the drain pipes, he says that his neighbor Walter was remodeling his house at odd times of the day. The researchers recognize the neighbor's name though, and we're soon shown why. We go back a few weeks before the incident. Their neighbor Walter is desperately trying to get a hold of Dr. Elbrick, who is one of the paranormal researchers interrogating Juan in the present. That same night, we also see him looking under his bed in panic and moving it out of place a little bit. As he tries to sleep, in his clothes I might mention, and above the covers for some reason, we see that the bed starts to slide down on its own a few times. He wakes up from this and looks under his bed another time, but still sees nothing. But as he lays back down again, the audience is treated to the terrifying sight of a deformed figure actually on the floor beneath him. Soon after this, his lamplight goes out. Realizing it's unplugged, Walter quickly reaches for the cord and plugs it back in, as we just glimpse the feet of something running out of the room. Somehow, even after all this creepy stuff, Walter just tries to go back to bed. But this time he hides under his blanket, which as we all know is the best line of defense. We hear menacing footsteps getting closer to the bed at the same time, as Walter just lays there and prays for his safety. Thankfully though, Walter survives the night. Despite that fact, it would probably be best for him to move out, at least temporarily, especially after waking up to find his room completely trashed. Instead though, Walter tries to call Dr. Albrecht again, claiming it's not just noises or things that move on their own, but he has also seen something. The secretary though says that before the doctor will take on any new case, proof of supernatural activity must be submitted. So, Walter sets up a camera to record proof, but decides against leaving the premises for the following night. A grievous mistake, and unnecessary on top of that. Set up a camera, plug it in to maintain battery life, and get out of there ASAP is what I call. Ain't no monster tickling my feet at 3 a.m. Now, after having set up the camera and after having gone to sleep, he soon wakes up to noise and notices the camera being knocked over. If that isn't enough, he also glimpses a shadow of an unseen figure. Once he gets the lights back on though, it's gone. He checks the footage to find that the creeper was watching him sleep, then hid in the wardrobe. Regardless though, Walter isn't playing around anymore. He gets his revolver, opens the wardrobe, but there are only clothes inside. He double checks the camera to study the creature, but is doing so while still standing right in front of the wardrobe. You know, the same wardrobe he just saw something slipping in. Which now opens up, of course, with a surprise inside. He catches a glimpse of the creature's reflection on his gun, but it's too late as the monster grabs it and Walter screams. We immediately cut to the next day where two kids are playing with a ball when it bounces into Walter's yard. As one kid goes to retrieve it, he stops to take a drink from the yard's faucet. Our Walter sees it through the window and bangs on it, telling the child repeatedly to stay away for his own safety. I think he scares the kid too much though, as he keeps backing away slowly until he's in the middle of the street, where a bus, well, plows him over. That's right, the kid is no more. And of course, no one goes to check on the kid, they just stand around and stare. But at least I guess nobody's taking a TikTok, so probably a good thing. It's now 4 days after the incident, and the mother, named Alicia, is grieving her child when she hears something coming from the door. She goes to investigate and sees muddy footprints leading to the front step and a shadow passing. The movie then cuts to another investigator from the present named Mario, who is investigating something important involving Alicia, probably related to what we just saw. He then notices a trail of muddy footprints leading to the kitchen, and after following them, he finds the child sitting at the table. The child apparently is not moving nor breathing and smells rotten. Our investigator then turns out the light and suggests his colleague to report this incident as Alicia being unable to accept the death of her child and dug him back up. While recommending this, the child's milk spills over. He wants to convince all the officers that any movements perceived were post-mortem spasms, obviously implying that he seems to think differently. They then simply think about reburying the child, but this time using concrete, to prevent anyone from digging him back up. Now Funes questions this, and Mario explains that they shouldn't meddle with what they don't understand, and that Alicia will end up in an asylum if she goes around saying that her dead child walked back home. While these are all valid points, don't forget that the best way to understand anything is, in fact, to meddle with it. Things are only scary because they aren't understood, which is why you study them. I mean, he is supposed to be a paranormal researcher, right? Not a paranormal cover-up artist. This breakthrough could possibly save lives. Also, sealing a child in concrete 6 feet below ground, especially if the child is immortal, would be kind of unethical, no? Now, the following morning, Dr. Albrecht finally arrives at Walter's house. Mario notices this and is apparently a big fan of hers. He invites her to witness the strange zombie child he's dealing with to get her opinion on it. As they enter the house, now with daylight illuminating things better, they notice that the muddy foot and handprints go up the wall and even on the underside of the upper level of the house. After Albrecht sees the corpse, Mario explains to her that he has seen this a few times before as a coroner. Patients long dead suddenly moving or even talking during autopsy. Next, Albrecht starts to share Walter's case with Mario, but they are soon interrupted by a child screaming. Apparently, the deceased kid's friend came by to pick up some toys he left there, noticed his old buddy at the table, and, well, yeah. They decide they can't leave the body out in the open anymore, roll him into a blanket, and then place him in the outdoor freezer. They seem a bit too easygoing about this though, as they're recorded by that same kid that had just came across the deceased friend. Maybe being a tad more alert when disposing of a body would be better, right? Now Funes returns and has everything ready for the second burial. As they go to get the corpse though, they hear it crying. It even starts to bang from the inside of the freezer. It's pretty severe post-mortem spasms, right? Instead of opening that freezer, which might not be the best idea to be honest, they proceed with carrying that whole thing to the cemetery. Now we finally cut back to the present day with the researchers interrogating Juan. They ask him to sign a bunch of documents so that they can stay at his house for a few nights. Their plan is to stay at the homes experiencing that same unnatural activity and try to study the phenomenon going on and put a stop to things. Juan agrees and the group is off. Mario stays at Alicia's house, Albrecht at Juan's house, and Funes, along with Albrecht's colleague Rosenstock, stays at Walter's house. Now jumping over to Mario, we see that he has some compasses set up, both official and homemade. He gets a call from someone looking for Alicia and gives them the number where to reach her, which he maybe shouldn't have done without checking the reason first why they're calling. Afterwards, he notices the answering machine has messages on and goes through all of them, which if we're being honest has nothing to do with paranormal research and is just him being nosy. The messages are from the kid's friend's mother claiming that she was just shown a shocking video that has her worried and wants to tell her about it, and we all know what that video was. At the same time, the colleagues at Walter's place notice silverware stuck to the bottom of a cabinet by what looks like to be paranormal forces. Rosenstock plays with them a bit, showing that they don't fall down. But suddenly a knife comes up from the counter to stick to the cabinet, piercing his hand in the process and pinning it in place. Funes goes to help, but it's really stuck. We then hear a slurping sound and notice that the blood from his hand is being sucked into the cabinet by something. Funes readies his firearm as Rosenstock slowly opens the door, but they don't see nothing inside. However, the silverware stuck to the bottom shifts over, as if the force attaching them moves as well. This is confirmed by Rosenstock being able to free his hand now, and the two retreats to the living room. They then contact Albrecht to tell her what they experienced, and Rosenstock says that he believes that Walter's house is the nest, whatever that means. After hanging up, he tells Funes to quickly clean up all traces of blood, claiming that he can't help to do it because the painkillers haven't kicked in. As Funes tries to ask why they need to clean the blood, Rosenstock tells him that there is no time to explain because time apparently passes very quickly here. Okay, that may be true, we can't say for sure, but it still doesn't excuse a doctor from explaining things while Funes is cleaning up the blood, right? Anyway, he gets to wiping when he notices some bloody footprints in the kitchen, followed by that sink breathing sound from the start of the film. This frightens him enough to call Mario as he tells him that he's terrified and wants to leave. Mario says it's fine, just like Rosenstock did before, so I don't know why this guy is still there if he wants to go so badly. While they having a conversation, Mario suddenly asks who that is standing by the window. Funes sees no one in the room with him as Mario realizes that the person is only visible from the left side of the window and not the right. After this, the phone goes dead. Funes goes to tell Rosenstock he's leaving, but Rosenstock ignores this and is just excited to show him what he discovered. He takes him to the side of the bed and shows that there is nothing under it, but then takes him to the foot of the bed to see humanoid figures lying underneath. He claims it's two distinct realities sharing the same space and time, only being visible depending on your perspective. That's great, but still doesn't really explain how or why this is happening. Now Rosenstock calls Albrecht to tell her that this is exactly what he was looking for and says that she thought as much. She then asks what they do now and he responds, well, I don't have an idea, just document as much as possible. Sounds about right to me. Now Funes finally leaves, but all he does is go to Mario's place, which he honestly should have done immediately upon losing contact with him. He finds the living room window broken inwards and blood on the floor. He then hears moaning and banging coming from a cabinet and rips a panel off after not seeing anything from the front, showing that he has learned to look for those different perspectives. Inside is Mario, but he doesn't look so good. Literally, he has glass in his eyes. Funes runs to Albrecht for help. Now she doesn't seem concerned at first, but eventually tries to end the research, but can't seem to get in contact with Rosenstock. Now, ignoring this glaring red flag, Funes just wants an explanation for what's going on. We get a theory from the doctor that there are parallel dimensions, but water can act as a bridge for microscopic beings from different dimensions to come through, and those micro beings gather and reproduce until they take over a body. Funes then asks the main question, is there any way to stop this, basically? And as Albrecht answers with a no, a massive arm reaches through the crack she was studying, breaks her neck and drags her body in. This is enough to literally scare Funes into a heart attack. A creature is seen crawling towards him, but just like before, they leave him alone again. Not sure how they decide who, why or when to strike, but that makes it pretty difficult to combat these creatures. Funes wakes up sometime later and tries to use his phone, but of course it's dead. After crawling around for a bit, he is found by Alicia, who wants an explanation what actually happened to her son after she was shown the video of them dropping her zombie kid into the freezer in her garden. Fair question, no? He agrees if she takes him to the hospital first. Now as they go to enter her car though, he notices a passenger in the back seat. It's Alicia's dead son. That's right, apparently she dug him up this time for real. Funes decides though he will just drive in his own car, which I think we can all agree is probably a good idea. But as he starts it up, Dr. Albrecht or something resembling her runs at his car with bloody hands and a dangling neck, begging for his help, saying that they're being tortured and he needs to save them. But Funes of course is none of that and just gets away even faster. He doesn't go to the hospital though and instead recuperates in his car far away. Eventually he answers his police radio where a fellow officer has been trying to reach him for hours. They say that they're in a neighborhood looking for him, so Funes orders him to get out now. This causes Funes to realize that others will get hurt from those monsters and gets an idea, apparently from his cigarettes, as he floors the car back to the house. He takes some gas cans from his trunk and pours it all over the interior of Alicia's house. While doing so, he finds a zombie boy in his bedroom, just wanting some privacy, as he slams the door shut. As he continues to coat the place, he shouts to warn Alicia to get out, but then finds that she's already deceased. Who would have thought? Outside, Funes tries to light a match, but they keep fizzling out. As he turns to avoid the wind, his new perspective reveals that it was actually his pal Mario blowing them out. Okay. Funes then opts to shoot his gun to start a fire, which likely wouldn't work in real life, but hey, it looks cool and gets a job done in movies, so why not? It looks like Funes gets to live at least, and maybe even takes a few of those creatures down. It's hard to say since we never truly find out what they were and if they were all fireproof or not. But let's go back to the start of the night and see if there was anything else we could have done differently. Well, right away we can say they don't have a big enough team, right? A bigger team means more hands to help with equipment or fight for our lives. And if we're cold-hearted bastards, it means more meat shields to allow ourselves to escape if things go south. But okay, maybe paranormal investigators are hard to find. So what next? Well, they could all be armed with some sort of weapon for protection, or at minimum the basic supernatural protectors like salt, iron or silver. Something is better than literal nothing they all have, except for Funes' gun of course. Next, the researchers came in unprepared for what to do if they actually did find something. So once they did find something, they were promptly killed by that something. Logic would denote that the second we know for a fact that hostile entities are in this house, we should immediately get out, right? Afterwards, since we have proof, now we can quarantine this area, start a bonfire with the house, salt the earth afterwards, and get an old priest and a young priestess for good measure. Lastly, for Funes' situation, the only character to get away, cold logically speaking, we should stay gone to avoid further contact with threats. However, he cares and does end up going back. But if we do choose that option, we should either burn all the houses simultaneously or at least start with Walter's home since they dubbed it the nest, right? This could mean it's the source of all the problems and once it's gone everything else would be fine. Plus, it's a duplex, so you would be taking out one's home as well, so going for the 2-for-1 special over Alicia's house seems to be the best idea here. We finally cut back to Juan, being interrogated by officers and doctors this time. They ask questions about the researchers and Funes, claiming the latter set multiple houses on fire with people still inside. As they try to question him further, Juan asks a question, "Did he come with you?" as he points to a seemingly empty spot in the room. The interrogators are confused, so Juan slides a picture of Rosenthal towards them, claiming that this is the man standing there, just badly burned now. Next thing we know, a chair in the background is flung towards the screen and the movie ends, which is a very confusing ending for a very confusing film. I hope you still enjoyed this video. It was a bit more of a recap this week, sorry for that. Next week we're gonna go back to the roots, proper beat video, as well as another video we've been cooking up in a horror movie niche, so stay tuned for that as well. Thanks for watching, and take care.